All right, everybody, before we go any further into this video, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about the Sleeper app and some new functionality they've recently rolled out, Team Picks. With Team Picks, you can pick winners in all kinds of sporting events. Right now, we have NBA basketball, college basketball, NHL hockey is going on, baseball's going to start in a little more than a month, and of course, you have futures in the NFL, even though the games in the NFL are over. Right now, if you look to my left here, you can actually see you can bet on next year's Super Bowl winner. They've got the Seahawks leading the way in those odds, by the way, at 12%. How does that make you feel as a Seahawks fan? But you can bet on MVP, you can bet on draft picks, you can bet on player destinations, all kinds of fun stuff, even though the season is over. So that is Team Picks over on Sleeper. A lot of fun stuff you can do. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. We are here yet again. Another episode of B&B or Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest. Whatever you want to call it is fine by me. I am Brendan. That is Brandon. And we've got some more off-season stuff to talk about today. How you doing today, Brandon?
Doing really well, man. Just motoring on through this off season that's going already super fast. It's we're just about to start out the combine, so looking forward to checking out a little bit of that. But doing good. How about yourself?
Good, good. Yes. And as you indicated there, the combine on-field work actually starts today. So there's going to be a lot of interesting information that we can glean over the next several days from the combine. I'll be paying attention. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to be paying attention as well. I know we don't have a lot of picks this year. I know it's not the most appealing draft class ever made, but there's still good stuff in this class that we got to locate, find, and ultimately bring into Seattle.
And please, please, God, don't let Ruben Bain's short arm length allow him to drop to the Rams.
Mm. Yeah, I heard a little bit about that. That's not okay.
30 inches, Brendan.
30?
Inches.
Really? Okay. I heard it was short. I
And
didn't
some
hear.
change. And a little
Oh, boy.
change.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know what? It's a weak draft class, so hopefully that doesn't affect things as much as it usually does. That's all I can say.
Amen. I'm getting worried about this now. This is starting to concern me.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I mean, this is how teams operate sometimes. Hopefully, by the time the draft comes around, people forget. You know, people tend to have short memories in this world.
Please. Oh my gosh, I hope so.
All right. So the last week, not a lot has happened with the Seahawks specifically. Obviously, the offseason itself is moving, but Seahawks haven't really signed anybody. They haven't really tipped their hand in a way I would indicate is meaningful. Like they've said some things like, oh, we would love to bring everybody back, but we know they won't. They said, well, of course, our offseason's not going to be affected by the fact that we're about to be sold, but what else are they going to say? So I feel like things are relatively chill for the moment.
I do. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of maybe the calm potentially before the storm. The storm being the decision that they really do truly then make one way or the other with this, Brendan. So it is a little bit of that. Okay, just everybody kind of holding their breath a little bit about which is this going to go because you get this late in the season, it's going to turn quick. It isn't a waiting game of 3 or 4 weeks. It's a waiting game of like in a week you'll find out.
Right. Right. The most interesting thing that I've heard in the last few days would be the Torrey Horton news, where apparently he's not going to do any work during spring while he recovers. So whatever happened to him was much worse than they initially thought. And I'm officially a little bit worried about him. Like the fact that he has an injury that is supposed to take a few weeks and now we're going into months and months and months. I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Well, I think you're definitely very hopeful for his upside, but to your point on this, Brendan, as it gets to the bottom line and what that means of what you just said to that is that yes, I love this kid's future with the team, and he's got a place hopefully into this future. But he was very injured at college the last point of the year with another one of those mysterious injuries to the lower part of his leg. Here, the same thing. I love him in the fold. I can't count on him as a base piece, though. I've got to operate under the assumption I needed to go beyond this a bit in making sure that I'm reinforced at the position. Because a lot of, I think, what the offseason is going to be done for us, Brendan, is reinforcing, hopefully adding some splash here or there, but reinforcing in general terms to make sure that you can buttress yourself up against injury.
Right, right. And we are definitely going to have a conversation about the wide receiver position, at least in part today, while we get into some of the things that we're going to talk about. But today's show is all about open free agency. So last week we talked a bunch about the internal free agents, guys that we want to keep, guys that maybe we want to let go, guys that we maybe want to release, guys we want to extend. So after last week's conversation, we're set up to take the plunge into open free agency, which is a week and a half away. Basically, it's technically 2 weeks, but open tampering a week and a half away. And the Seahawks are going to have some money to spend here, and I think they're going to need to spend it because we do not have a lot of picks.
We don't. I think that this is a good spot, though, to kind of get into a conversation I'm going to be curious about. Just I'm wondering as much as anything else on this. There's going to be a lot of money to spend. I think that you're going to get a couple of your free agents done in-house. I don't think you're letting everybody walk. You are going to still need to then get some things covered for the very reasons we just talked about here a second ago. But I also kind of find myself with two different positions here thinking, Brendan, as I look at the situation. I think first off, I think you see all these teams that have negative dead money, and you know they're going to have to carve themselves low just to get below the cap to do order business. That the teams that do have money now are going to, there's a lot of teams down that's kind of like two different ends of the spectrum here. We got a good collection of teams with absolutely no money right up against the cap, and then a bunch of teams here up at the top got a lot of money at the cap. I feel like you're overpaying right now, and I feel like also with John's history, he tends to get a little bit, I think he gets cold feet when it comes to putting out big contracts out there in free agency. So if he's going to spend to me, he's going to fit to his history at times, which is going to be a lot of those 1 year kind of contract flyer situations. I find myself a little bit, not saying I'm not willing to spend free agent money. I'm going to be willing to be somewhat active here. Okay. But just that I also keep that collection of kitty of resources there for training camp and on into the trade deadline, not to not spend the money, but to strike a little bit more when maybe there's more of a market opportunity. Where would you kind of sit on in all of this fray?
I mean, I would always prefer to do that. And one thing that I've talked about a lot on this show in previous years is that free agency is ultimately where you go to overpay. Free agency is where you go when you either fail out in the draft or you need something that's a little bit more a sure thing than what you find in the draft. The issue is, for me, the window's open now. Clearly, the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl. This is our window. I don't want to lose a chunk of the window because I was afraid to spend a couple $1 million. I don't want to lose a chunk of the window because I was afraid of an intimidating contract. It's one thing when you're not in your window, then yeah, I would say let's take it easy here. Let's not overextend ourselves. But when you're in your window, the way the Seahawks are right now, I do want to make sure that I'm not prioritizing finances over giving myself the best chance to win while this window is here. You're muted.
I apologize. What would that look like then from your perspective on the type of contracts you're looking at getting out here? We'll go to specific players on this. We're going to get into these individual parts exactly, but just in general terms, what are you looking to maybe leave in the reserve, I guess, for once you get through free agency? Here's what I've got left in the pocket. Maybe that's a good way to ask this.
I would be trying to leave a decent amount left behind. And honestly, looking at free agency so far this year, because I've already done quite a bit of work looking at some of the free agents that intrigue me, and I'm sure most people have as well. We are getting pretty close to the date when it comes up. There aren't that many guys who I think are going to require some massive multi-year deal that I would necessarily want. There are one or two. There are always going to be a couple. But at the same time, I also recognize you're probably not going to get those guys. Like, I'll reserve conversation on this one for a little bit later. But there's one guy in particular who has apparently already turned down a market-setting contract at his position. And if that is true, then I don't really know how you come in higher than that. You're already number one. Like, what else are you looking for here? And like, I see that. But at the my whole thing is, there are going to be a couple of opportunities to really improve the team in free agency, and you have the money for it, and you don't have draft picks to improve the team massively in April. And again, your window is open. So I just want to be like, if we end up letting, to turn the conversation back to our outgoing free agents. If we end up letting Ken Walker go over a couple $1,000,000, and then we get to the season and we find out we just don't have the running game to sustain a Super Bowl caliber squad, that's not going to sit very well with me, because I believe that this team is so well positioned to compete at a very high level. I would hate for a couple $1,000,000 to get between us and a potential repeat, because there's really not much you can do at the running back position if you lose out on these couple of top guys.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I mean, that's really the bottom line of this, is that you got to try to find that, strike that balance. And I would say that to me, this is more about the outside free agents in the nature of my question. I think on the in-house guys, I don't think we're going to have as much of an issue with, okay, you win with this guy, you know what you have in him, you overspent by $1 million or $2 million for a running back. I don't think that that's going to get anybody's hankles up, but just in regards to the outside free agents, more specifically into the kind of that wave one-ish kind of area, and then how much you dive into that versus leaving that chunk of change for a little bit later on when we've seen John have a lot of success. Again, both, training camp and up to the trade deadline, and being able to, a big part of getting those deals done from my perspective, Brendan, is not that you aren't willing to give the trade capital, but do you actually have the cap space to take on what's a lot of times like the base of the salary, or whatever that hit's going to be from that player that year. That's what tends to be ultimately what decides whether you can get it done or not.
All right. Well, it is going to be kind of interesting here, because there are going to be some guys that linger on into like June and July, as you indicated. And when those guys get signed, it doesn't affect the compensatory pick game, right? After June 1st, there's no more comp game consideration here. So if you can, and I don't mean to step on next week's show, if you can wait until June and then sign a Jadeveon Clowney, you're doing very well for yourself. That would be something that would be ideal. If you can wait until June 1st and then get a veteran running back who can give you decent carries for the first half of the season, you're doing very well. And I would definitely be interested in trying to pursue that, because that comp pick game is looming large right now, because it looks like we are going to let a decent amount of our high-priced free agents go.
Exactly. This would be my exact approach, Brendan. So glad to hear you're in the same kind of camp on it. Again, not saying that we're looking to do something in free agency, just that it's not going for broke here and then having the bag empty later on down the line.
Right. Okay. So today's show is going to be about the offense. Today we're going to be talking about external, outside offensive free agents. And there's quite a bit of stuff going on here that is interesting. Now, there are certain positions that I'm not really paying attention to, like quarterback. I haven't looked into quarterback stuff at all. This team already has 3 quarterbacks under contract, which some would argue is already too many, but it's certainly not like we need another one. We could let Drew Lock go, but why? Milroe's not going anywhere unless we trade him, and I don't think that's going to happen. We don't need to think about quarterback this offseason, I don't think.
Agreed. I think the team really likes their situation as it stands right now.
So the conversation starts at running back, and unfortunately, the top of the running back market has already been kind of cut down to size here. It is believed, although not guaranteed, it is believed the Jets are going to franchise tag Breece Hall, which he was kind of the crown jewel of the running back free agent market for a lot of people, I think. So very annoying.
Jets are such a horrible organization.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that. And Javonte Williams already re-upped with the Cowboys, so he's also off the table here. I mean, I didn't want Javonte, but I do like him. I do think that he is a pretty good running back. He's just not necessarily what I was looking for. But because of that, the guys that are left may command a little more money because there's less available at the top. Right. So
I agree.
According to Spotrac, and this is just Spotrac. Spotrac gets things wrong all the time. The 3 top running backs in free agency when free agency kicks off are going to be, we have Rachaad White of Tampa Bay. They've got 2 years, $15.2 million on him. They've got Travis Etienne. They've got 2 years, $13.6 million on him. And they got Rico Dowdle, 2 years, $13.1 million. So let's say the Seahawks lose Ken Walker in free agency. Let's say some team like I don't know, the Titans or somebody like that offers K9 15 million a year, and we just can't quite get up to that point where we think that's worth it. Is there anything in this group that does much for you as a K9 replacement?
I do like White and Dowdle, so they're not bad players, but this is a little bit about though where at the price this starts to hit in on the ledger a little bit tough for me, Brendan. I'm not a big ETN guy. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on him, but I just don't. Whenever I find him, and he had a very good year, so I'm probably underrating him, and I'm probably overlooking him. And some of this comes back to the evaluation of him coming out of college and just not seeing anything in him that really gets me super enticed. White's interesting because of what he can bring out of the backfield as a pass catcher and being that threat. And if you even had Walker coming back, having that a balance act wouldn't be the worst thing if Charbonnet was going to take all year to come back. We don't know how long this timeline is going to be. Maybe he gets back 75% of the way into the year. We'll see. And then how strong is he at that point? We got to be careful, I think, on relying too much on Charbonnet because of how late into the season the ACL injury happened. Dowdle's not quite the fit to me as far as getting to the edge and what you want to run as far as outside. He's more of an inside kind of type runner, which I think you can get in this draft if you're talking about getting up to the place of spending $6.5 million per year.
Yeah, it's not really a group that does a ton for me. I will say one thing about ETN is he's got the speed to get to the outside zone runs, but I don't know if he's really a true outside zone runner. I don't know if he has the vision to really be a guy you want to put in space and say, go find the hole. So it's not a perfect fit, but I do consider it to be a little bit of a better fit than White, who, like you said, is a good player, but to me, he's mostly a pass catching back. He's like a third down guy. And Rico Dowdle to me is a little bit more like the punch. Like I'd like Rico Dowdle as a Charbonnet replacement, not a K9 replacement almost, if I had to pick.
Yeah, agreed. Dowdle's a good player, but again, just the price that comes in for what skill set he brings. I think you're accurate on ETN, and I think you capture a little bit. It's just kind of hard to place exactly what it is he does. Not that he's not a bad player, but just what is it you do? What is your skill? What is the thing you bring to the table that's going to, he's solid back. He's just you find yourself hard pressed with Travis to kind of mention specifically what it is about him that it's like contact balance, or he's got a great spin move, or he can, like you just can't quite come to anything with him that really comes to mind. But White's not done much behind a very solid Tampa Bay offensive line as far as running the rock. Is a good pass catcher, could give you that element of it. If you got this guy in more of like, we're talking, Brendan, I think at like a couple $1 million deal, your $3 or $4 million deal that John's given out in the past, those 1 year, $4 million flyer for vet running backs. Now we're kind of talking, but when you get into like multi-year and you get into it being about $5-6 million per year, well, that's where it starts to get a little bit more like, ouch.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is that these are the kinds of players that can slip through the cracks. Like one day they just look up, everybody spent all their money, and now they're just trying to get a 1 year, $3 million deal. So don't think that Spotrac is going to be some ironclad guide for how these teams spend money. But there is a world where somebody like a Rico Dowdle ends up getting way less than this, is what I would say.
Agreed. Yeah, I think White and Dowdle would be those candidates. I think ETN, it seems like the Chiefs are circling around him. But I would say with both those other two guys, that certainly is a possibility.
There are some other free agent running backs that are probably going to be a lot cheaper that are also, to me, at least somewhat appealing. The other guys that I'm kind of circling right now would be Tyler Algier. For some reason, Spotrac has him at 1 year, $1.8 million. I think they're kind of smoking crack there. I don't know why he would be so cheap when he's been a pretty darn good player in Atlanta for the last 4 years. You got Brian Robinson. He's the former Washington guy who got traded to the Niners last year and almost never got the ball because Christian McCaffrey doesn't let anybody else touch the ball when you're in the offense with him. And then you also got Nick Chubb if you're looking for like that veteran ring chaser. He would also be very cheap according to Spotrac. Anything in this group do anything for you?
Chubb could be interesting with being a guy that gives you an intermediary before you can get back to Charbonnet as an tough inside runner. Robinson, maybe as much that some of that he brings as well. I think none of those guys are really pure fits for outside zone. They are guys that give you an inside running capability that you do need as a counterbalance at times with Walker. Algier, I agree, is going to be higher than the 180. He's probably a $4 million a year guy in that realm too. So, I'd be okay with it as far as if you're not wanting to go in this draft from a Hawks perspective, you don't like the running backs necessarily, and you want to get a guy that, again, just has a little bit of that insurance policy while Charbonnet's on the mend. You don't know what necessarily you have back with McIntosh coming back. So you're just looking to like really reinforce the position. It's not the worst of money to spend to make sure that you're keeping the running back position sufficiently talented and capable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Brees Hall franchise tag thing really feels like it just ruined the party. Like it gets so thin here so quick.
Yeah.
I think Algier could be like a nice little Charbonnet replacement if you could really get him on that 1-year deal, which I don't know. Like he's been pretty productive in Atlanta behind one of the best running backs in football, and he's also I think he's got like the record for most carries in an NFL career without fumbling once. Him and Charbonnet are like right at the top.
Wow.
I think that's a little underrated as well. But
Definitely.
yeah, I kind of like the idea of pairing Algier with Walker for a season. That I think that would work pretty well if you want to do something like that.
Yeah, I'd be good with that. I think it'll be interesting too. As I try to think about it, I don't think there's going to be a ton of teams that are necessarily, looking for those running backs. Obviously, I mentioned the Chiefs in there, Brendan, but if you do go through kind of the list of teams in the NFL right now, the Texans will probably be on that list of looking. Maybe the Cardinals. They've got Benson coming back. They might be on that list, but not the Rams. Niners, maybe. Right? Like who's going to be the aggressive guys on the market to go spend money for these running backs? I kind of is what I'm saying. I think this will be kind of the supply and demand where I think that there might be a little bit more of not that there's a burgeoning supply here, but there'll be more of a supply. I think that maybe there is going to be for necessarily the demand, which might press down the prices here just because of that. Because I kind of go through and I can't think of a lot.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs will probably want somebody, maybe the Broncos as well, because they're moving on from J.K. Dobbins. I think that teams are done trusting J.K. Dobbins to stay upright for more than a month at a time.
I think they like Harvey there, though.
Man, he's already like 45 years old, though. It's so weird how he's already this veteran and he's only been in the league for a year.
Payton loves the kid, Then they got Shaheed as kind of the speedster counterbalance to him on that. It doesn't preclude them from doing it, but I think from them they're going to be looking more probably wide receiver as far as targeting goes.
True. All right. There are other free agent running backs. Does anybody in particular like catch your eye that we didn't cover just now?
Not really. Maybe like a Kenneth Gainwell. He's got some juice. Out of Pittsburgh.
I like it.
Yeah, he was able to hold off the kid out of Iowa last year that was supposed to be the running back. Caleb Johnson, everybody thought would be fantastic. But I think that that's just about really it on that. I'm not really interested in Gibson or Eckler. I think their best days are behind them. And Najee Harris is coming off a major injury. So
yeah,
that'd be about all you got there.
Like Isaiah Pacheco, maybe he'll be out there. I think the Chiefs don't really want him back. Michael Carter's probably gone from Arizona. Kareem Hunt, Raheem Mostert. And we know Mostert's done really well in that Shanahan scheme before. So if that's what we're running, maybe.
34 years old, man. He's it's your better bets to go different direction at that point. Just go to the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we got a couple guys here that are kind of okay, but I'll tell you, if we lose Walker, we are putting that Shanahan scheme to the test. And that is one interesting wrinkle, right? We're running a scheme that has historically produced great running backs out of nowhere. So maybe the team just feels like we'll find the next great running back out of nowhere if we lose Walker, and it's okay.
It's very possible they're applying it that way. John's been very cagey in his responses. You've seen the interviews this week with him talking about it. Everybody's asking about the Walker stuff at the centerpiece. He's using the same kind of language every time he answers the question. And it's one of, yes, he praises Walker and certainly seems like once, but you're not getting an indicator of like, we've got to get this done. There's not that sense of urgency to it.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I don't want to count them out. They are going to have a really good offensive line this year, an extra year of continuity with maybe the same 5 guys, or they bring in some really over-the-top level player that's going to be really, really good. Like, there is some reason to believe that this team can become like those old Broncos teams that would just churn out random good backs every year. It felt like they would churn out Mike Anderson, a Tatum Bell, and Olandis Gary, just out of nowhere guys that are suddenly one of the best, most productive running backs in the league. But it is a heck of a thing to risk on a team that just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I would be very cautionary against trying to replicate that in that way. I would. I would understand if the team took that approach. Don't get me wrong, Brendan. So I'm not saying there's not a possibility that this is where they're going to go and this fits to analytic people and what they tell you. But the thing with that was that the Broncos accomplished that because they had an offensive line that was structured to be so far ahead of its time and how it was built that nobody else out on the sport was built that way. So every time they went up against an opponent every given week, they were able to slay them because that opponent didn't practice against that. That opponent didn't face that. And I'm speaking to the small offensive linemen, the cut blocking that you were doing across the board on a consistent basis. You know, these things were separate from how offensive line was being played at the time. So it allowed whoever the running back was back there was going to get those holes, was going to get those guys cut down, was going to get the backside cleared out. And that's just, you're not going to get that now in the same way because you can't do cut blocks anymore. And yeah, you can run with lighter linemen and more mobile linemen, and we're doing that. But there's a lot of teams in the NFL doing that. So there's a lot of defenses practicing against that. So it does get harder to necessarily just get into that. We'll just roll in the running back every single given year newly in this, and that you're going to have that happen. You can do it to a degree. And if you got a great offensive line, as we know with analytics, that's going to be a driving force of your running game as much as anything. But at the same point in time, you would have been then taking a step back, and you'll feel that. There's times Walker helped us out, Charbonnet helped us out a lot by both being 2 top 5 rated backs by PFF for a reason last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't ignore how good those guys are at their job, and don't think you can just replace it with anybody. Yeah. So I hope they don't go that route, but I could see a scenario where they kind of feel like they're forced to. If somebody comes in and offers K9 some ridiculous money, then I get it. I understand. I have some sympathy for it.
No, I feel the same way with the Shaheed thing. You never know when you get into free agency, teams are going to overpay. Super Bowl winning guys that are free agents, there's that Super Bowl bump, man. It's just true. I've seen it throughout history, and you never know when it's going to hit in. And it's the crappy part about winning the title is that your guys get overpaid on the open market, but we've seen it before.
Mm-hmm. Real quick here, a comment on the running back market here from the Goose, a member over on your site. If K9 walks, it is Sean Tucker time. I don't think Sean Tucker's a free agent this offseason.
Little Syracuse love in the house. I like it. Yes, he is. He is a free agent.
Oh, really?
He's an RFA. He's an RFA at Thugs.
Okay. Going to be hard to get him away from Tampa. I think then he's been pretty good for him,
especially with them losing Rashad White.
Yeah,
and that's with what's his face has got banged up this year a little bit. So it might be hard to get that one. Thugs like him, but might be hard to grab him quite yet.
Keep forgetting who Tampa Bay has at running back. In my head, they still have like Ronald Johnson and Bucky Irving. There we go. In my head, they still have like Leonard Fournette and Rojo for some reason.
Irving's one of my draft misses. I didn't think he'd be as good as he's been.
Yeah, but hey, if Sean Tucker shakes free, there's another reasonable option. But again, I don't know if he's like a lead back in an offense. Probably like a number 2 or even a number 3 guy, honestly.
Yeah, probably. I don't think he's going to replace, but he'd be cheap. Not going to cost you a lot.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next up, after we get through running back here, we do have wide receiver. And I didn't really spend very much time thinking about the top end of the wide receivers. There are definitely good wide receivers that should be free agents this year, but I don't see this team breaking the bank for a receiver, knowing what they're about to have to give JSN, knowing that Cooper Kupp is still here. Do you think this team could go for one of the higher paid receivers in free agency this year, personally?
I was actually contemplating that very thing before we had our show today and looking at kind of some of the free agents receivers that are out there on the market. And my feeling on this is that there's really not going to be a guy that they're going to look to sign on the open market other than really a Mike Evans doing kind of the ring chase thing, coming in. It's kind of a disappointing market, and I don't mean to backtrack really quickly, but I just had a random idea for you and looking at the Lions thing, just a last tap on the running back thing. If the Lions are in negative cap space right now, and they've got to sign Jahmyr Gibbs to a contract extension this offseason, if the Lions called you and said, hey, give us a first round pick and you got to sign Jahmyr Gibbs to an $18 million per deal, would you make that move?
Oh boy. Jahmyr Gibbs. How old is he now?
That's a good question. I gotta look it up here. Sorry. still on his rookie deal, so he still should be pretty young. I think he came out pretty young, but let's see.
God, that's tough. I guess you could look at it as like this is the price to keep your Super Bowl window open.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm thinking about it like that, if it's like either I do this with Gibbs or I'm stuck with Rico
23.
Dowdle, I guess I would do it. Normally I wouldn't, but I guess I would do it because I would think like either I do
Stuck in
this,
Rico Dowdle.
either I do this or Rico Dowdle's my number one running back next year. I would probably rather do it because again, the goal is to win Super Bowls, and we have a chance to do that right now.
Yeah, I think I would be drawn to it as well. I mean, the cap hit right now for Gibbs is at, $5 million ish, but they're going to have to, if they signed him, they're going to have to do a lot of stuff just to get their normal order of business done. They don't have a lot of contracts on the books that stand out that they're going to cut. They can base the bonus stuff across the board and free up some space. I don't expect the Lions to do this. I'm just wondering it. Just didn't mean to backtrack on you there a little bit, but I was just thinking as I saw that negative space, like, well, as we're going through these limited options, as we know the draft isn't that great with running backs as it stands, maybe this would be an alternative.
I think it's more likely the Lions trade their other back. What's his name? Montgomery?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more likely they trade him, if anything.
I could see them definitely doing that. But even he doesn't carry that huge of a cap space hit necessarily, but that'd be enough to probably get it done. Like they're only going to save like $3 million on him by cutting or something.
For some reason, I thought it was more than that. But anyway, back to wide receiver real quick here. So there are guys that are going to get a lot of money on the market. The guys like Jawan Jennings, Alec Pierce. Apparently, Wan'Dale Robinson is going to get way more than people think. Spotrac actually thinks Debo is going to get paid surprisingly amount of money.
They're in on Debo, huh?
Yeah, they think Tyreek's going to get $15 million, which I think is their formula kind of run wild there. I'm not convinced Tyreek's ever playing football again. If anybody gives him anything, I'd be kind of surprised.
Yeah, I can't see where Tyreek is. And what I've heard about this knee injury, it's not just your everyday, just like, oh, he just tore the ACL. It's like, it was pretty close to catastrophic type knee stuff at his age. And he's a smaller guy, so he loses any of his speed or juice. If he hasn't already started to lose a bit of that, I can't get that. And you mentioned Alec Pierce. He's going to get super overpaid. There's even talk right now they might release out the other guy, Pittman, and then sign him instead just because of the cost. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to go that route, but that's it's going to be one or the other on the open market, and both of them are going to be too expensive for my taste. Don't you feel the same way? I mean, I just feel like this is if running backs were maybe going to be overpriced city, this is definitely overpriced city for not the greatest of parts.
Yeah, to me, if we're going to get a receiver, we're going to get somebody that is going to be less than Shaheed. I don't think you let Shaheed go and then go get somebody more expensive than Shaheed in an offense that doesn't use receivers that much, in an offense that doesn't throw the ball that much, when you already have JSN about to earn one of the biggest contracts ever by a receiver, and Cooper Kupp is sticking around for one more year. It doesn't make sense to me. So I looked at the budget option receivers, guys who look like they're going to be cheaper. Like significantly cheaper than Shaheed probably is going to be. I don't know about you, but that's kind of where I started my search.
What on the front of the one guy that I agree with you on this for the most part, just the one guy being in the exception of this, if you lose Shaheed, would be potentially to me Mike Evans. So let's discuss this as a possibility of you lose that one. I think everything else you're right on. There's nobody else that I think anywhere close in the neighborhood we're touching. What about this as a possibility? I think the 113 is probably a little high by Sports Track. That's a little bit like the Tyreek math they're applying. I think it's more like a 110. So let's look at it through like the 110 lens, Brendan.
My issue with that is I feel like Mike Evans is a guy who's been flirting with injuries like his whole life. Like I remember even like 6 years ago, I would be watching Tampa Bay games and it felt like every time I see him, he's on the sideline, like grabbing his thigh, grabbing his knee, grabbing his ass, grabbing his shoulder. He's always just battling through intense physical trauma. And finally in 2025, it caught up to him. I don't know if I like his odds to have a relatively healthy season in 2026. And look, if he wants to really go on that ring hunt and play for like maybe 6 million, that's one thing, but 10 million, especially because I got to put it all in 1 year because it's going to be a 1 year deal. That's tough for me because he's going to be 35 before the season starts. I'm sorry, 33. Excuse me. That's pretty old and coming off that really bad season he just had. I struggle to imagine him getting back to anywhere close to what he was.
Yeah, I think that there's some valid points there. I think that you could kind of say some of the same stuff about Cooper Kupp. And when you go from a guy being put into that number one target share place to now you get to be more into that secondary place that maybe you aren't going to be beat up as much. Maybe you can have a little bit of longevity through the season itself that you wouldn't have had otherwise when you were at your age, that number one kind of guy. My worries with him do come a little bit into cost. The price has got to be right, Brendan. I also am a little bit concerned with him on his run blocking. I think whatever receiver comes to this squad has got to be willing to be a run blocker. And that's used to be a really almost dominant part of his game that's now become a little bit of a weakness in his game a bit. And I'm not liking that. For his big size, he needs to be a dominator out there. And that part was a little bit unfortunate when looking at some of the research on him recently.
And the other thing is he already has a ring, so he may not be hungry for the ring in the way that some of these guys are. So,
I mean, last paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, like, would you expect Von Miller to ring chase this offseason knowing he's already got two? I don't know.
I would, because he's been doing nothing but crying this whole offseason about the fact that he turned down Seattle for Washington on his podcast. So if I didn't know that, then I would tell you yes. But the fact that he was like, it was all it was missing was like sad music and little raindrops falling over the screen as he was talking about it about a month ago. What could have been, I think, was like the title of his video.
Yeah, he's still got a little bit of juice left, by the way. That'll be an interesting conversation next week.
Nine sacks, huh?
On a bad
I was surprised
defense.
to see that. On a bad defense, 9 sacks. Oh, geez. Okay. Go Vaughn.
All right. So the free agent wide receivers I'm looking at, and for the most part, I would want a downfield threat, somebody who I feel like can be that deep threat to take the top off the defense to replace Shaheed at a cheaper price. To me, that's what you would want here. Some of my top guys would be Marquise Hollywood Brown. According to Spotrac, you could get him on a 1 year 5.5. Christian Kirk, 1 year 5.4 on him. And I think he would actually be even a little bit cheaper than that because he hasn't been that productive the last 2 years. And here's an interesting sleeper here. Jalen Naylor of the Vikings, really underrated downfield threat, always making big plays in that offense. 1 year 4.7. Those are kind of my initial guys that I'm targeting here, hypothetically.
Yeah, I mean, Brown's really small. We come back to a little bit of the run blocking element being a problem with him when I have him out there. Kirk's, I think, more of a slot guy at this point in his career.
Maybe.
And I don't think we're already kind of too deep on the slot. Like you say, we need more of the outside X type receiver. Naylor could work a little bit on that. I'm open to him as a possibility on that lower end. I think it does get a little bit it does get thin to me on this, Brendan, going back through and looking through these guys to that guy you're looking at, like you said. I mean, even Wan'Dale Robinson, for instance, a slot-only guy. So there's just not a lot of outside guys as you go through it that would really work in that kind of X role. Like little Jordan Humphrey does nothing for me. Brandon Cooks is a little too old at this point. I don't see a lot there.
Yeah. And I also had a couple other guys. These guys are going to be even cheaper, and they are kind of just pure take the top off guys. Jalen Tolbert, 1 year 3.8. Tyquan Thornton, who is like the definition of a guy who can run fast in a straight line and do nothing else. They have him at 1 year 2.8. And Tutu Atwell, who is also kind of in that vein of just like run really fast in a straight line. They got him at 1 year 2.6 million. Those would be good guys to just kind of intimidate the defense with their straight line speed. So if you are trying to basically find budget Rashid Shaheed, those are the guys that I'm initially circling.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very hesitant to make the moves here with these guys, even at the low price that they're at. The only way I would do it, Brendan, is if John did not think, number one, he could find the equivalency in the draft. Number two, that he couldn't have make another Shaheed-like trade at some point this year for a guy at the receiver position that can bring those items to play. If he thinks the answer is no on both those two questions, then you pull this lever if you don't have a Shaheed back. But if not, I'd be hesitant to jump on any of those guys.
Yeah, it is tough. It's kind of like last year when we got Scantling and he didn't even make the team. These guys could end up in that same bucket. Yeah. But I mean, like Atwell's probably going to be cheaper than Scantling was. We spent $4 million on Scantling. Tutu, he could easily end up signing in June for like less than $2 million.
Yeah, if you're talking about getting down into vet minimumville, I don't got any issue. And we're not that far away on the last two deals you got down there. I mean, you're going to be going about $1 million over. Now these are going to like break my heart to sign these guys for that insurance policy. And that's what you had with Valdez Scantling. Turns out he's the insurance policy. You're still, you have Cody White developing. You've got obviously the Horton you drafted. And so you're just like, all right, let's see what we got. And then like, okay, we feel good about those guys. Let them go at training camp. But, then there is a price you pay on that too, right? Because then there's a dead money hit, even as small as it might be to a degree, then hits onto the cap for doing that. Do you have to take that jump or not? And that's where John's got to look at the lay of land on this. And I think you're smarter to kind of, rather than like have a $1 million insurance policy at the receiver position, to me, just take the risk of it and then make the trade as you have to if you get into training camp and come to find you don't have it. You can always bring back a Bobo. Cody White's going to come back next year. You've got a variety of receivers on the front end of this. Horton will be back into the fold, not counting on, but he's back in the fold with Kupp and JSN on top of it. And, you've got some options here, I think, to go with this. I'd almost want to bring like a Derek Young back or what you already kind of know in hand more than going to the outside on these options.
Yeah, Thornton is kind of interesting to me because he is such a pure speedster. And he was making big plays for that Chiefs offense early in the year. Like, it's not just all track speed. He does have some football ability.
Yeah, no, he found a role and he had a pretty good year for them, especially as they've been waiting for kind of or looking desperately for a receiver target to develop out there. Hell, they might go back to the reservoir again this offseason or into the first round of this draft just to try to find another answer there. So he can make some sense. You need this component in your offense. We knew it going into last year, and then we felt it early on in the year that like it's great JSN's doing what he's doing, but what happens once they wind the coverage to JSN or start to live into too high shell? What are you going to do then? And that's why John Wynn made that trade, is that he kind of understood as well, yeah, I need to get out ahead of this thing. This is going to be a limiting factor to us if we try to play this out through the whole course of the year.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there are, again, a lot of other free agent wide receivers, not really super interested. I mean, once you get past guys like Tutu Atwell, you're already starting to try to talk yourself into bringing Tyler Lockett back. And once you get down to that, you've gone too far down the list.
Yeah. It's one where unfortunately the wide receiver crew just isn't great in how it looks, but that's where I would be open to saying like, okay, look, I'll bring back guy or look for the trade. Let's find another creative solution to looking and addressing this issue. Cause there's not one on the front end that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, the guys that are good are going to get paid a lot of money because Pickens is going to get tagged. We know that. So Pickens is not really going to be available. Unless you can trade for him, which is a different kettle of fish. Yeah. And then you're like according to Spotrac, Debo is going to get 15, 16, 17 million a year, which I don't know if he will, but the fact that we're even having that conversation tells you the wide receiver market's a little bit crazy right now.
Yeah. I think it is a bit of the combination. I think of there's a lot of teams that have done good to retain their receivers here through recent years and signing these deals. There's not as many great free agent receivers coming into this class, and then the draft class itself. I mean, the free agent class, and then the draft class itself. You've got some guys at the top that are pretty nice, but you could make an argument that the receiver class kind of starts to drop pretty quickly after you get past the top of the second round. That there's there's a dip between those two at that point.
Yeah, and I feel like the running back or wide receiver class in drafts is always going to be good these days because of all these college teams that run the spread. So there are so many receivers out there that are prolific. Same reason why there are so many good cornerbacks every year. The teams need defenders to guard against the spread.
I agree. I do think this is one year, though, that where you do see the receiver position a little bit less than what we've seen in recent years. Not that it's purely bad, that there isn't some good stuff there. There is. But it's just that it is, because of that reason I just said, where you're okay a little bit at the front end. There's not a blue chip guy, but you've got like 5 guys in the top 40 or whatever. But then when you start to get to me into sort of that, the second level guys on that, they're not right there next to those guys. There's more of a kind of a dip down, in my opinion, to that next level, and that will I think have its impact on this wide receiver class, where teams understand that as well, and that draws them to make Alex Pierce a $24 million a year guy if he gets on the open market, or Pickens a $30 million a year guy if he signs a contract.
Yeah, and I get the Pickens thing. He is really good. I don't know if I trust him with long-term money, but he is a very talented receiver. The Pierce thing, I don't understand. Like every team that has even a slight need at receiver is drooling all over him, and I don't get it.
Well, I mean, it could be an indication that people think that I think he's been one of the best man beaters in coverage last year. I think he was number one in that aspect of things. And maybe teams are anticipating a little bit with him that number one, he's not been utilized at his best to the utmost because of all the kind of receiver options that have existed there with Indianapolis. And on top of the fact, they're kind of a run first team. So people are looking at him, they're going, well, you didn't get utilized as good as you should have been. If you were here, we would be having you with way more targets. And then they see his man coverage stuff, beater coverage stuff. And they say, well, the league's going to go to more man-based coverage concepts here in the next year or two. And so a guy like this is going to be really nice to have. Could be some of that as well. But it also could be a little bit, nobody else is on the freaking market of any competency.
Right. All right. We got Dylan Sosa here. Thank you for the $1.99. Going back to the running back convo real quick. I think we overlook McIntosh. He's a dog. Yeah, I would just be concerned with the injury.
Yeah, I think Dylan, I like McIntosh a lot. I think he would fit to the outside zone system well. And he was a 1.52 10-yard split guy. Even though he didn't have the good 40, he had the really great 10-yard split, which is much as important for this outside zone as anything else. Tough runner. I think he absolutely could have a fit in this rotation. But the one thing I think that we've learned about this rotation, not just this last year, Brendan, I think you'd agree with me on this, but when you go back through recent history and looking at our running back position, it's one that tends to be one of attrition and one that you're going to lose a couple of guys. And it was nice this year to keep both the two guys as we did and keeping it balanced and keeping the load, but you still end up losing the one. And Holani got injured as well at one point. Like, luckily had those two guys going, but Holani was out as well. And then you also had lost McIntosh at the start of the year. You got to build this thing 4 deep, in my opinion. And that means not 4 deep with the fourth guy being just but the fourth guy being McIntosh, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Holani being able to do a little bit was significant in that Super Bowl. I know it wasn't a lot, but he did actually make 1 or 2 nice plays in that game. And he was actually really good in that Rams game. I think he had like 30 receiving yards or something. So that stuff comes back. That stuff really matters. Being able to get good stuff out of the guys like that. So yeah.
Having the depth, man. You got to have the depth here for this position. It's one of these guys just get battered.
Right. Yeah. And if we brought back a guy like a K9, even if we paced him, I wouldn't expect him to play all 17 games plus playoffs again. That's just not I think that's going to be a position where you have to move forward just assuming we're not going to get a full season out of these guys. It's kind of like these load management NBA players. Just prepare for it.
Got it. I agree 100%. I think you're smart. Not only is that you should prepare for it, I think not all teams are, Brendan. So this is one of those market opportunities to get an advantage where others don't have it, where they would go for some also ran kind of guy. I look at the Texans running back room this year, Chubb and Woody Marks. Are you kidding me? Like that looks paltry compared to what we did investment wise to our position, comparatively speaking. I like our approach a lot better.
Yeah. Or you're like the 49ers where you get to the end of the season and CMC has nothing left.
Yeah.
One of the best running backs in football, and he's a ghost by the postseason.
Yeah. No intelligence into the load balance game of what you're trying to do with it. And it's part of many things that we did so smart this year was that load balance game, in part because then when Walker had to go take those extra carries in the playoffs, he was good to go. He was basically as fresh as a daisy at that point. And that was because you kept throughout the years, so many Seahawks fans, and you heard it in my chat, your chat and my chat both, that why aren't we just using one or the other? Got to go with one or the other. Okay, it's time to go with Charbonnet. Okay, it's time to go with Walker. It's like, caution, fellas. There's a reason they're doing this. This is smart. And it's the antithesis of, like, to your point, Shanahan, who just rides that thing until the wheels fall off and then he moves on to the next. And he doesn't ever think twice about it. And it's like, bro, it's a problem for you. You should probably kind of start to learn your lesson on this one a little bit. What did CMC have? 450 touches this year? Total on the year?
Yeah, and remember, he gets those targets where he doesn't catch the ball but still takes a hit too. So yeah, it might be really 500 in practicality.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And Brian, they went out there, they went for Brian Robinson. And they just decided they weren't going to let him get it. That's Shanahan's approach, though. He's been doing this for years. There, he's synonymous with it.
Yeah. I'm just a little concerned about McIntosh because he's already had the 2 devastating injuries in his career. Like he was already kind of a slower guy to start with. At this point, he might just be a pass catching back and not much else.
Yeah, I mean, he's a former 7th round pick for a reason as far as when he drafted. I do like him. Back to our original point on this, but the bottom line on it is that he is coming off this injury. It's hard to count on players coming off injuries to say this guy's going to be part of the stable. It's great if it happens. Some of the roster building has to be like, if this happens, it's a bonus. If that happens, it's a bonus. And that's kind of, I think, one of these situations with McIntosh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've said everything we can say about wide receivers. So tight ends, I don't care. I didn't look at tight ends at all. I have no idea who the free agent tight ends are.
No, there's no chance at all of us touching tight end in this free agent class. There's zero zip zilch. You're 4 deep right now going into the season as it is. They're fine at tight end. They're going to stick with what they got. We are where we're at, so they're going to be fine there.
Right. So that leaves the offensive line. And I do think there are some interesting conversations we can have about the offensive line here. For one, I'm pretty happy with where the offensive line is right now. But there are 2 positions that people are going to talk about that could be upgraded pretty easily. One is center and the other is right guard. And let's just start with center here. So to me, it's pretty simple. If you're going to go for a center, you're getting one of the big guns. You don't need to sign an okay center. You already have one with Sundell, and he's very cheap. Like he's like $1 million this year, I think. And you're not going to sign a good backup center because you already have that with Oluwatimi, who is also very cheap. So if you're trying to get a center, you are going for the big guns. And the big guns, according to Spotrac, this year in the center position, you've got number 1, of course, Tyler Linderbaum. He is the gun to end all guns, projected to get 4 years, $71 million, and that may be low based on recent stories and rumor. You've also got Connor McGovern, projected to get 3 years, $49 million. He's been good for Buffalo the last 2 years. And then you've got Cade Mays, who is projected to get about 3 years, $37 million. So let's talk about the possibility of upgrading the center spot for 2026.
I think you're right. I think first off, you're coming in a little bit more sniper-like in this approach. If you're going to make a leap or a jump here, one way or the other, I don't think you're coming in here just to kind of get a vague upgrade at the position. Some of it, again, back to your good point there, which is that there's places and positions on this team you're going to spend money on, and a lot of money, and that means that then with the salary cap as it is, even with the amount of money Seattle has to spend, there's other places that you have to now find places where you can go cheap on. Hopefully get good play still, but find places where you can go a little bit more inexpensive. So I think that's going to be generally the approach when this is all said and done, Brendan. To me, the only guy that makes sense on this is going to be Linderbaum. McGovern has been solid to your point, and Mays okay, but those guys are very close. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Sundell was like just right there next to as far as performance-wise, pretty close to where Cade Mays was last year.
Yeah, and Cade Mays also can't stay healthy. That's the thing. He's never played a full season. Honestly, I don't know why he's expected to get this much money, but Spotrac, they know more than me. I'll defer to them here.
And it's not a great center class. So, if you need to get an answer, you may need to get your answer out here in free agency, and that's maybe driving some of this. But I think that McGovern, 28 years old, I think that what you do get with Sundell is not only now that's his first year of starting, there's a lot of reason to believe he's going to be even better here next year. Younger player, a guy that's a pure scheme fit in what you have in Sundell. And then you get the continuity factor. You go flip into one of these guys, it's just kind of a marginal upgrade. You're losing a bit of the continuity factor you get from having the returns of next year. I'd like to do that for more of a splashy guy. Linderbaum would be that guy if you're going to make this run.
Yes, I do tend to agree. McGovern would be okay, but I don't think he's a massive upgrade over Sundell. And as much as Sundell isn't a great player, I think there's some stuff going on with him that is pretty good. And he can get better. He can get a lot better. He's still young. And the thing is, supposedly, and I don't know if this is true or not, it may not be true, Linderbaum has already been offered like $20 million a year by Baltimore, and he's turned it down. So if he's looking for more than that, I just don't know if center's the position where I can justify spending $22-23 million a year.
No, I don't think I could either on that, quite frankly. I think that starts to get into a little bit of funny money territory. So I'd be hesitant in the same regard.
Yeah, and I guess the alternative would be he doesn't want to go back to Baltimore because he feels like that's not where he's going to win a Super Bowl because they're restarting a little bit with a new coach. Maybe that's what he's thinking. If he's thinking along those lines, then maybe, but I'm going to let somebody else give him 23 million a year. It's not going to be me.
Yeah, I would let somebody else do that as well. And who knows? Maybe a team like the Raiders would be willing to throw that kind of money at him. You know.
Yeah, I imagine that somebody will. I think that there is an urgency to really go crazy with the offensive line positions right now in terms of what you spend on them. But to me, center is still a position where I really hesitate to spend massive money on. To me, you don't get the return.
Yeah, I think it's one that I'd be very careful with, and when I would put that money out there. To your point, it would not be a one. This is one where it's left tackle, right tackle, left guard. You start to get to center being kind of the fourth most important on that pecking order, in my opinion, and that needs to be taken into account. And then again, back, there's only so much money to spend. You gotta delve, you chop it up and delve it up in the right way. And I want those resources going to the prime positions. Not that I don't still willing to invest in a center like with the draft and stuff, but I think that you can work some other directions with this without having to go 22, 23 million per to get it done.
Yeah, and the next highest center on Spotrac, by the way, was Ethan Posick at like 11 million a year or something. So things get thin pretty quickly, and I like Posick, but he hasn't been the same the last 2 years. I don't know if he's a scheme fit at this point anyway. He's on the wrong side of 30. So you run out of centers to talk about very fast.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There's a couple journeyman guys in there, but to your point, is there the athletic fit there? Is there guy, and you still do have Olotimi there as the viable backup there. I think you feel solid enough there on that with those options on the table.
Dylan Sosa, thank you for the $2 once again. Mac gives me D-Law vibes in this year's free agency. Yeah, I am high on the Khalil Mack thing, and we will talk about him, I think, a lot next week. As long as he doesn't get re-signed between now and next week, I think that will be a top subject of next week's show.
Yeah, it's he's a guy I've said there's a couple guys I think it's really especially on the edge, Dylan, because this tends to be the position that does produce these every year where there's guys over 30 years old off the edge, still very productive, or at least very productive as at the very least as pass rushers. Mac fits into this mold, and a guy that you could potentially take advantage of being a ring chaser type guy who's I've earned my money, I've made my dough. I'm not coming in trying to get 15 million per this year. Just pay me something solidly. Let me fit into the row with this and let's go. And he would be a power edge. He's been in our exact defense last couple of years here with the Chargers. He'll know what he needs to do as far as the role goes in this defense. That's big. And the cost shouldn't be great. I love it, Dylan. Love to see it.
Yeah, and I said this last week on the show, I believe, but Khalil Mack has never won a playoff game in his career. He is 0-6. So yeah. we got to help a brother out.
There we go. That's where that ring chase thing might be able to be. It's going to be one of the interesting factors for me this offseason, Brendan, is do we attract guys in that way? Can you find a couple guys out there who are going to be like, oh man, this is the spot. I'll come and take a little bit less to be part of something special. It's hard to get to this place where you can be a draw like that, but Seattle's, if there's any team in the league that is right now, you have to think they're one of them.
Yeah, also without a ring would be Jadeveon Clowney. He's got no ring yet, right? Cameron Jordan, no ring, spent his whole career with the Saints.
That's right.
You've got Hassan Reddick, who left the Eagles the year before they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
That's right.
I think Kyle Van Noy won a couple with New England, but there are some ring chasing edges this offseason for sure.
Joey Bosa, Von Miller.
Yeah. Leonard Floyd, maybe he has one from the Rams, but he could still want another one.
There you go. There's some guys out there. And again, none of them, I don't think are going to necessarily break the bank. So you can find some guy and just to fit that right in that rotation and roll.
Dante Fowler, I think, has no ring.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Another guy that could potentially fit in here, and the Cowboys don't have necessarily a lot of money. By how they're kind of situated to get this done, they're going to struggle to get this thing fitted right.
All right. So next up, we have right guard. This is the other offensive line position that kind of at least screams for a discussion. And I've said this many times. I don't think this team is in such a big hurry to replace Anthony Bradford at right guard. I think the way they look at it is we just won the Super Bowl with him playing almost every snap. So how bad can he be? And I think they do look at some of his good moments and weigh them as heavily as they do his bad moments. And they're like, we'll take the good with the bad. But I think we can at least have a little bit of a conversation here because there are some good right guards in free agency this offseason. And I guess you could go this way, especially if they end up being a little bit cheaper than currently expected. Like according to Spotrac and according to the market in general, the top right guards available are going to be Ed Ingram, projected to get 3 years, $39 million. You got Elijah Vera Tucker, who I think this projection is way off. I think he's going to get less than this, but they have 4 years, 51.3. And then you got Wyatt Teller, not expected to return to the Browns. They got him at 3 years, 30.5. Does this group do anything for you?
Wyatt Teller's on the wrong side of his career as far as his recent performance goes. I don't see him as an option here. Ed Ingram is a guy that had a good year last year here in a free agent year, but the prior year was not particularly good. I think he's been a little bit up and down in his pro career, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just trying to guess here a little bit out of school with him, but I want to say that, and looking at him a little bit, that's been a bit of the commonality.
Vera Tucker, you mean? Vera Tucker, you mean?
No. Vera Tucker's got a different. Ingram was Ingram was top 12 rated guard last year. Here's his other prior years is how he's been rated: 2022 57, 2023 59.5, 2024 54, and then he comes up and has a relatively solid year again on that New England Patriot team that played a pretty poor schedule throughout the course of the year.
No, he was on Houston, right?
Oh, Houston. Sorry, my bad. I was looking at the wrong thing. My bad. No, Houston. But I don't want to pay a guy off of one performance in a contract year. That screams to me of a guy that got it all together for his contract year and is going to dial it back the second you pay him. Maybe the light bulb just went on. I'm not going to take that risk. Tucker didn't play last year.
Yes, he missed last season completely, did not play a snap. He's always been well regarded when he plays. He just doesn't play as much as you would like. I think
that's where, to me, I don't think that money that's being put out there with Vera Tucker at $12 million per year, I'm not sure he gets that.
Yeah, there's no way.
I don't see, and a 4-year deal, there's no way. I mean, he'll get a 2 to 3 year contract, and he'll get a little bit of money, but I think it's more going to be like 216, 217 is what you're talking here. And if we're talking that, now we're talking into a territory where I'd be saying to Elijah Vera Tucker, yeah, because here now you can go get a guy that can work, I think, a little bit all over the offensive line. I think he's got some left guard experience too. So now he gives you a bit of a backup for Zabel in fitting in there, and then he gives you competition in there at right guard as well. So if you get him in kind of a lower end contract, I'm not going anywhere near $13 million per year for the reasons you said. He can't stay healthy.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because, again, every time he's been on the field, he's been regarded as a very good player. He's just can't stay on the field. But if you could get that 2 years, 2 years, $16 million with an easy out after 1 year, that's pretty good.
Yeah. He's played 15 games in 2024, 16 games in 2021 when he first came in, 7 games in 2022, 5 games in 2023, 15 games in 2024, and 0 games last year. Uh-huh. So he's missed more than the majority of the season in 3 of the first 5 years of his career. That's where, to me, I just don't see how this money part makes sense with them. But that money, to me, for a gamble like this, I'm okay taking a swing at that.
Yeah, he is a lot better than Bradford, I think. And I think he'd be an okay scheme fit too, as long I don't think he's like immobile or anything like that.
No, he can move. He can get around. He should be fine.
There are a few other right guards that you could spend a little bit of time thinking about. You got Dylan Parham, projected to get 3 years, 30.2. Kevin Zeitler, the ageless one, is still out there. 1 year, 9.2 is the projection. And James Daniels, who was having a nice start to his career, but then last 2 years he's barely played. But he was good last time he played. 1 year, 6.8 million. Those would be some other guys you could at least kick the tires on.
I don't think I'd be on either of them. Zeitler's 37 years old at this point. It's too old. Dylan Parham, that's going to be a bit expensive for me. I don't want to be throwing that around for a guy like that. I'd kind of be no. I might be on like a vet minimum with like a Will Hernandez maybe, but even here it's like we have our backup too. So it's like you're really looking for a guy that can push either really push Bradford or also could be the backup left guard at that point. Because that is potentially a hole. Cable Do might be able to work there, but you'd like to do maybe better than Cable Do. So that's really more of where I'd be targeting if we're talking about a vet minimum kind of guy, is looking more for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're probably right there. Again, when I'm looking at these guys, I'm trying to find guys that can actually push Bradford. And I don't think you're going to find that in the vet min territory. Like, I know we make fun of him, but he's actually not he's not as bad as some people act like that he is. You could do
No,
worse than Bradford.
I agree. I agree. And again, on it's, you got to deal with the position long term for sure. You're not going to probably get a contract extension, but you still may find, God forbid, Christian Haynes continues to maybe develop too back there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's about it for like the main stuff. I do think there's going to be a little bit of attention paid to like backup offensive linemen at the other spots. Like we need a swing tackle because I think Josh Jones is going to get too much money because he was good for us last year. I think he's going to maybe even get a chance to start somewhere. Like he was good. Or the Chargers overpay him or somebody like that, like you suggested last week.
Yeah, it just kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Like if you maybe even you have your tackles in place, but I mean, shoot, Patriots, like if you were like, we're going with Will Campbell again this year, we trust in him, he's going to get over these short arm things, and then you're like, and we're going to sign Josh Jones too, just a little bit of insurance policy there, and I could see it.
Yeah. So swing tackle, I've got a few names here. Let me just run through them here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I know we're in the backup territory now. Braxton Jones, Andrews Pete, Kelvin Beachum, Vidarian Lowe. Does any of that do much for you?
Vidarian Lowe could be interesting as a guy to come in there. I mean, he's certainly, I'm looking to do the same kind of targeted deal we did last year with Jones if we can, kind of a 1 year 3 sort of thing. Though again, some of this has to do with the intentionality of what the Hawks are going to look to do here for the draft. Because with Kite, they may like him as kind of that Jones guy for the left side. Now, are you going to find the right tackle guy in this draft that now eliminates the fact that you don't need to have the guy you pay on the $4 million 1 year deal kind of thing? That's the part I'd want to know a little bit about what John's intention are here to serve what I would do.
You've got like Trey Pipkins, who was underqualified as a starter for the Chargers last year, but might be overqualified as a swing backup. Trent Brown, Charlie Heck. You could go get Jake Curhan back, Lucas Nyang. Those would be some other swing tackle options.
The first couple of guys there you mentioned are more immobile type dudes, so they just don't have Trent Brown cannot move at this time at this point in time in his career. And Charlie Heck, I love the Andy Heck connection, former Seattle Seahawks first round pick, his father, but he's also not the most mobile of guys who can move. So you're probably going to want a little bit of that. You're either going to want a mobile guy, Brendan, or you're going to want a masher like Josh Jones was. Because that was the thing with Josh, right? Was he came in as a 330-pound left tackle that could just mash in the run game. So we'll get one of the two things. And those guys aren't kind of mashers and they're not kind of movers. So I would say you're probably passing there.
Yeah, it's tough. Luckily, we only really need one here. We were able to get through last year with just kind of having one backup tackle for both spots. But it is something that I think we need to do. I don't know if I want to trust a rookie in that role. I think that's a lot of responsibility to put on a rookie's shoulders. And I don't think we win the Super Bowl last year if Josh Jones doesn't come in and provide above replacement level play.
Yeah, I agree. I could see it being look, that was a really smart signing. One of the smarter signings of the offseason by John. That's saying something with the offseason he had. But that was a great addition to the team. I mean, you didn't have him and you had to put out Kite out there for those games instead. Maybe a different result.
I think there's also maybe a backup left guard because we don't really have one right now unless you really trust Richmond or Cable do, and I don't know if the team does. If you want to make a serious investment here, John Simpson is on the market and he'll be like one of the most highly qualified backups out there. Brady Christensen is going to be available. Chris Paul. Do those names do much of anything for you?
Brady could make some sense because of the fact that he's the former tackle convert, so he's got some mobility to him. He's not played awfully. Backup guy. 5.5 might be a little expensive, more than I want to spend for that, but I that's about the right territory. Paul doesn't have me as interested on that the same kind of thing, just a little bit more pricier than I want to be at.
Right. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I don't think we have to spend big here because there is a chance that a guy like a Cable do or a Richmond ends up doing what we need. So like a lower level of backup left guard. There are a few names that I did find here. You've got Dalton Risner, who we've been talking about for a couple years now. He's floating around again. Tevin Jenkins is supposed to be very cheap this offseason because he didn't get to play last year at all. and Aaron Stinney is going to be like bottom of the barrel 1 year, 1.5. Maybe those would work as just like a pure backup at left guard.
I got any problem with it. That's for sure at that price. You're going for that. It reinforces you for the draft, so you don't have to reach for need at some point in the draft. In a draft, you don't have as many picks, so you're probably going to make a move like this when it's all said and done with a left guard position. And that, in the case, I'm okay with it.
What happened to Tevin Jenkins, by the way? That guy was a really good starter for a while, and then just suddenly, no one cared.
Couldn't get healthy ever really at Chicago. As always, if you look at his like PFF grades, always posted solid grades, but then you couldn't get on the field last year. But then again, it makes sense is that Batonio still played all last year, and then Teller played all of last year. So there was just not a spot for him to play. But it could be an interesting signing for that reason, because you get him dirt cheap. The team showed interest in him last year. But again, I almost felt like he had a bad interview last year, Brendan, don't you? Because he didn't sign a big deal with the Browns. It was like a 1 year, 3 thing. So like, what was the, sometimes you have those guys come in, I think, and they get the vibe off them. They're like, we don't like the vibe. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe like he's on one leg. He had his leg amputated and he didn't tell anybody. and to me, that's the only way this makes sense. Almost his leg got amputated and he just can't play football anymore, but people feel bad for him. So they want to keep paying him.
Yeah. MRI, that's the other thing they do is prod and take a look at them when they come in the building like that. So to your point, saw something up on the MRI, didn't look good.
All right. So before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor. Could you tell the people about Sleeper a little bit while I set up here?
Yes. Me and Brendan have been rocking with Sleeper here throughout the course of this year, of course, and they've been kind enough to sponsor both of our channels throughout the course of this wonderful NFL season. And right now with Sleeper, you can take advantage of a lot of different items, including utilizing either of our 2 codes. That's SBN or NEST, and they will match you up to 100% of your first deposit, up to $100. That is a hell of a deal. And there is more, because they'll give you the free 20, which is just create a login. They put $20 into your account, so $120 from me to you through Brendan, through me and from me to Brendan. I can't say it right here, Brendan. Me and you, from me and Brendan to you through the app. And it's the #1 sports app in the game because they've got so many different options, so many different picks to go through, overs and unders. You got basketball in full swing. You can get into daily fantasy on that. You can get a weekly fantasy on that. You can get into baseball. You can combine them up as that's just about to open up. Combine up and build up your own ticket today. Go win some money. You think you know sports. You think you got knowledge of it. Put that knowledge to the test. Go win some money today. Use our code. Get that match. Terms and conditions do apply. Please see Sleeper for details.
Yeah, and by the way, they've got our boys at #1 on the 2027 Pro Football Champion list. How do you feel about that? That's pretty good, right?
Feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about that. It's pretty nice to be sitting with the odds, and pretty understandable why we would.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so yeah, Sleeper, man, they got some good stuff going on over there right now. So check them out. Go have some fun, and just because football's over doesn't mean sports are over, people. There's still a lot of stuff going on in that sports world right now. I know we got plenty of multi-sports fans in the chat right now, so go give it a go.
Hell yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think we've kind of covered all the ground we needed to. I know that it feels like it wasn't a lot, but when you've got your quarterback position handled, you've got your tight end position handled, you're good at tackle and left guard, sometimes there just isn't really a lot to talk about. Sometimes you just feel like you're pretty good with your team and you just got a few areas you might need to address.
Well, it's right. That's 100% correct. And, we talked at the start of the show today about the fact that when we wanted to spend the money, when you wanted to jump, when you wanted to strike. And I had a show I did on this, and I want to talk about with you at the front of the show because I had a show that I did as kind of what I was trying to predict in John's off season and got some pushback because people were like, you're sitting on all this cap going into the training camp, and this is after you won the Super Bowl. You shouldn't be sitting on your laurels. You shouldn't be letting people kind of catch up to you. But we looked at these guys, and it kind of shows you in looking at these guys that there's not the bright, sparkling guys to go pick from here. And it's really like when I want to add on to this team, I don't want to just add a name or add a guy that would seemingly give you a little bit of an increase. I want to really, top off the tank, Brendan. I want to add a guy that's really going to be able to, help you. And when you look at the free agent class, the offensive side of the ball, I think defense, we're going to have a couple more names that help out on us next week. Not that there aren't some names here that are potential options. It's just that you're going to overpay a bit. maybe there's going to be other times of the year where you can deal with it better and not overpay as much.
Right. I'm inclined to agree with that. It's a tough balancing act too, and I sympathize with John right now. It's tough to balance these things because I understand you got to want to try to go for the repeat, but you also don't want to give K9 $18 million a year or something because he's not worth that. He's just not.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go for the repeat, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you go out and give Mike Evans $15 million a year. It doesn't make sense. So it's a difficult thing to really work out here, but he's shown that he knows how to do it. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to do it. And this is going to be one of those off seasons where even if I'm not in love with everything, I'm not going to be overly critical because he's proven that he understands what buttons to push. And until he proves otherwise, I'm going to roll with that.
I'm going to find myself in the other place of it. The man just won the Super Bowl for the second time with a whole different crew, the first GM to do that in NFL history. And well, what you and I both do, Brendan, a lot is analyze this team and have to at times be critical of them. You're going to earn quite a good amount of goodwill and a lot of benefit of the doubt. We're a little bit back into the days of in John we trust because you've done so much on this. And I just feel like him having an opportunity to also do this a second time, to go through this and learn the lessons of having gone through one of the youngest rosters in NFL history to win a Super Bowl. And now he gets to do this again and see what lessons he learns and see which ways he moves and how that's different or how it may be the same. Where it's like, well, okay, this didn't work out, but my process was right. Or that process was wrong, and we're changing our whole approach this time going through it. Be one of the more fascinating things to kind of monitor with him as he goes through this.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we wrap up here, I want to ask, of the positions we talked about today, which is basically the whole offense, who are your two guys that you really want to, if not sign, then at the very least target very, very specifically and make a big push to sign?
So I would say that, I mean, you giving me the Linderbaum news that he's won 23 is kind of like, that would have been my answer a week ago, but yeah, 23 is like,
maybe that's a rumor. Maybe that's a rumor, or maybe he ends up changing his mind and he's like, I just want to go somewhere where I feel like I can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's probably maybe something a little bit to it. It does add up and track. I'll give you the two names here. I think Vera Tucker at the price we talked about, not the funny numbers Sports Track's trying to present, but actually on a market equitable deal. That guy gives you some reinforcement for left guard as a backup. Could be a guy that could really significantly push Bradford as a starter. And then I think that if Shaheed's going to get to the open market, in my opinion, Mike Evans on a 1-year, $10 million deal coming back in the fray would maybe not be the worst thing to me. And that I think that you fit him into this receiving core. He's a true X. He's a bigger receiver that you bring in. Okay, you don't have necessarily the speed, but there's a couple ways to accomplish that whole, what that guy does speed-wise and clearing out coverage. And if you're going to draw your double teams over one way to JSN, if you're going to put your number one corner on JSN, I'm going to be able to trust, I think, in Mike Evans and 3 wide receiver looks to be able to beat what oftentimes is going to be the second or third best corner on the other team.
I like it. I'm intrigued. I mean, if we sign Mike Evans, it would be exciting. I don't know if it'd work out, but I got to admit, it would be very exciting to get a Mike Evans. So I'm down for that.
It's just, I think it's one where I'm not, maybe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm not as much loving up on this wide receiver draft outside we get past like the first 5, 6-ish guys.
Especially not for us, especially not for the Seahawks team. Because pretty much everybody who's really good is going to be gone by the time we pick. And like I'm looking at it right now. You've got Tate will be gone, Tyson, Lemon. By the time we pick,
and Boston will be gone.
Yeah, like the number one receiver when we pick will probably be like Concepcion, which, I mean, that's a downfield threat. There is something there, but I'm not. He's
one of those guys. You're right. You're on it. He'd be one of those guys in that top place. I wonder if he's going to be there too, even if we pick though a little bit with this draft. But once you get, I think it's like once you get past him, and then it's really the Cooper kid. I think he's the drop off spot. Omar Cooper out of Indiana. Once you get past him, to me, then you're starting to get in a place where it's a little bit. It's a bit like you don't know what you're going to necessarily get.
Yeah,
like, watch how people are hyping up like Malachi Fields and go look at his production. You're like the hype versus production. You're going.
Yeah. Isn't Fields like the really big guy? He's like 6'4" or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes the circus catches, but then you go back and look at the production, and you're like, yeah, but the.
You're hoping he's going to be Metcalf, right? Metcalf didn't have big production in college either, but he made the. Yeah.
you're kind of, but this guy ain't going to run no freaking 4-3, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, he's going to be a 4-5-5-ish guy, you know?
Yeah. I saw a chart the other day. Zachariah Branch, apparently like 55% of his targets have been bubble screens in his career.
He's not the only, that's the thing about it is I was watching a guy last night that was his thing too. I'm trying to see on my list who it was, but there was another guy just like that last night I was looking at. Same freaking way. It might've been Skylar Bell on that, but yeah, this draft's filled with them. The Berrien kid too, from Berrien Brown from LSU. Another one like that. I think CJ Daniels, another one like that a lot of people like. Those guys, half their tape is bubble screens and tunnel screens, Brendan. I'm not kidding you. And then they have limited production. So you have all these bubble tunnel, and then you get limited production on the back of it. So you're like, okay, I got limited production and half your catches are all from bubbles. And this is all I got is this left. This is it. This is it. And you go, well, and these guys will talk about him like people will be talking about it like, that's a high second round talent. That's a third round talent. I'm going, that is way too big of a risk. I need, like you mentioned, DK, good comparison. I need a freak show there. If I'm going to take the guy that's got not the production into the second round, I'm not taking the guy that's like mildly interesting with lesser production.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I do kind of tend to agree with that. What I would just say is I don't know if this team really needs a receiver because they're not a receiver heavy team anyway. So I don't want to bring in Mike Evans to get targeted like 5 times a month or something. Like, I don't know.
Well, I think if it's on I think it's on a 1 year, $10 million deal. I think that's where it's a little bit different for me on that, because I think that's a relatively inexpensive cost deal for Mike for what he's bringing. And yeah, it's great if you've got all 3 of your starters going and you're not, to your point, yeah, you're not going to use them a lot, but are all 3 of your starters going to run 100%? And we talked about Torrey Horton. I'd like to have him as kind of the bonus guy into this mix of things. And with great to what you got with GSN, but that was a lot of use of him last year. A lot of use, and got injured even into that Super Bowl a little bit. Cooper Kupp, another year older. Is he going to be able to get for a full season, healthy and get all the way through that? I think that's a little bit of a risk. So it's as much of an insurance signing as much as anything on this. I think you're right about that you're not going to get ultimately the most production out of him, but how nice was it to have the insurance of a Cooper Kupp this year, even at the price that it costed?
Mm-hmm. All right. So real quick before we get out of here, though, just a few names of guys that could be released in the coming couple of months, or maybe could be made available for a very cheap trade. I'll just throw out some names here. Spotrac actually has a really cool feature this year where they do a list of release candidates based on salary cap numbers. Okay. Alvin Kamara.
No, he's significantly, he's just not the same player.
Aaron Jones.
No, doesn't do a lot for me.
Joe Mixon.
Coming off a very major injury, I believe. No.
Tony Pollard.
Tony could be interesting, but what's the cost going to be?
Well, that's a little bit harder to know, but apparently Tennessee saves all $7.5 million if they let him go. So you're probably looking at something like giving him like maybe, I don't know, 2 years, 14, 2 years, 12.
Nah, I'd pass on that.
Let's see here. Brandon Ayuk.
Yes. Yes. Vet minimum 1 year prove it deal just so you get revenge against the Niners.
What the heck happened there, man? Like, that guy's so good too. What the heck happened? I don't know.
I saw he was on IG the other day going live with an ice cream cone melting down his hand in his $200,000 car and sitting in his seat. I don't know what's going on with him.
Mekhi Becton.
Not really a zone fit here. I think the team would have made a run at him last year, even if they were a little bit interested there. But I don't think he's going to be quite the mover that you're looking for. I mean, you kind of already have Mekhi Becton and Bradford. They're kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Elgton Jenkins, Packers center.
He could be interesting. I mean, he's probably going to make a good amount of money. He can play I think he should play just about every offensive line position. So his versatility is through the roof. He'd be interesting as a kicker guy. The price would be where's the price going to be at a bit here, but I'd be open to that one. That's a guy that, he can play a lot of spots, which is nice to have a guy like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. I just wanted to run through some of the bigger names that might get kicked out of their team in the next couple of months here. Okay. So I think that takes us home, man. So thank you for doing this with me.
Appreciate you.
I think we did good work here today. And thank you, everybody, for stopping by and listening. I know we're headed into the off season. I know things are slowing down, but we are a week and a half away from things popping off for at least a little bit here. It's going to be an interesting free agency period. I think this team will do something to get our attention because they got the money to spend and they've got the motivation to spend it.
I agree. I'm expecting, whether it is the free agent period or whether it is making some trades, from John's perspective, I don't think that he's not going to do something here in the next couple of weeks that's going to have a major ripple effect here on this team. So it'll just be interesting on this, because it's so hard to predict exactly which way he'll move, because they have so much space here to work with, Brendan, and there are so many different directions and avenues you could head down theoretically.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next week we'll get together and do this again for the defensive side of the ball because the free agency still won't be open. But also for the rest of this week, we do have the NFL Combine. So we may also have a little bit of a conversation to have about what we see from there. I know that I think it's the edge rushers that are performing on the field right now. No, sorry, not edge rushers, but defensive linemen and linebackers. So some interesting stuff already going on by there. Have you seen the 6'7" inside linebacker guy?
I did see a flash. I haven't taken a look at him close yet, but I saw him kind of come up there.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
What is it? Dante Corleone is apparently 6 foot flat, but 340 pounds. So he's probably wider than he is taller.
He's a wild guy, one of those guys too. We've been looking at for 3 years, So
Mhm.
he's just, you've seen it. You've seen so much tape on him. Some of these prospects you just know backwards and front now because you have watched so much of him. He's one of those
Mhm.
guys.
Yeah.
I'd like to see his arm length. That was the thing I wanted to see with him, on where his arm length was going to be.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting, but he is fun. All right. So thank you everybody for coming out. We will do this again next week. Brandon, thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you, man.
And
Always fun.
the off season's about to get hot and heavy, guys. We've got free agency, and free agency goes on and on and on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Quite often, sometimes you get good guys that don't sign until June, July, or even after the season starts. Clowney didn't last year until like a month into the season. So things are going to be happening. We got the draft in late April, and we're going to be covering it all on our channels. We're going to be covering it all together. So see you guys then. See you guys later. Everybody have a great rest of your day. And of course, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.